We're here in the beautiful Amsterdam in a hackathon of Bitcoin Cash, and we're here with Ryan. Could you please introduce yourself, Ryan?
Sure, I'm Ryan X. Charles. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MoneyButton and Yours.org. I've been involved in Bitcoin going all the way back to 2011, and for the most part, I've been writing wallet software and basically developing consumer-facing applications for end users based on Bitcoin.
Right. Actually, the money button is pretty famous, isn't it?
I suppose so. We are trying to tell everybody about it and get as many people to use it as possible, so I hope we've gotten some attention about it.
All right. We actually had a pretty interesting discussion about the future of Bitcoin Cash. Perhaps you can lay out your vision for Bitcoin Cash, because there's some divisions within the community.
Sure. I'll start with my vision first, just because I don't know that I could actually speak for everyone in the community. My vision is Bitcoin Cash as world money. So the goal here is to create sound digital money for the entire world. That is something where everyone in the world has access to money that cannot be blocked, it cannot be frozen, it cannot be reversed, and it can't be inflated away. And at the same time, it has low fees. It's something that you can actually use as a payment system. It's something that is actually fundamentally better than things like PayPal or Stripe, because you have sovereignty over your own funds. You can transact with anybody anywhere in the world. You can do things like, if you want to trade with someone in another country, you do not have to worry about third party after third party after third party in the middle sucking your value away one way or another. We have genuine peer-to-peer digital cash for everyone in the world. That is my vision for Bitcoin Cash.
For cheaper transactions, for instance.
Cheaper transactions, but I want to go a little bit further than that, because there are people in the Bitcoin/Bitcoin Core world would probably sketch out something similar. At least some of them would. But at a technical level, what I'm interested in and what I think everybody else in Bitcoin Cash is interested in is actually on-chain scaling. So we believe that this will actually work. So by basically increasing the maximum block size as needed indefinitely, we actually can scale globally. So that's how I see this happening, and I don't see things like Lightning Network ever actually getting global adoption, for reasons I could go into, but I'll say that I believe it's actually impossible for Lightning Network to get global adoption in the same way that Bitcoin Cash could.
Actually, there was this test there like 3-4 weeks ago on the Bitcoin Cash network. It was like I don't know how many million transactions were on the chain to test the chain.
Yeah, so there was a community-driven stress test that, if I remember correctly, was executed on September 1st. And the basic idea was to see what is like the limit on the number of transactions we can process in Bitcoin Cash. And there were some interesting lessons there. The most interesting one is, even though we've actually raised the maximum block size on Bitcoin Cash to 32 megabytes, there are actually a whole bunch of other limits that are actually not necessarily written into the software that prevent us from actually going all the way up to 32 megabytes. So the largest block was something in the 20-something megabytes. That's interesting, because now that we can see how this works in the real world, we can find the other limits and start fixing those problems to allow us to scale beyond 32 megabytes.
All right, so, and if we just move to this split, within a few weeks there probably is going to be a split or a hard fork of Bitcoin Cash, isn't it? Or what's your prediction on it?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I certainly hope there is no split. A split is a really, really bad situation if that actually occurs. I think it could be potentially fatal. Not to terrify anyone, if it actually happens, it's not necessarily fatal. So there's certainly going to be a hard fork. All the implementations that people are running actually do have a hard fork in November. What is not a guarantee is that there will be a split. So there are going to be at least two different chunks of miners, probably roughly speaking 50% each, that are running incompatible rules, and it is somewhat straightforward for someone to build a transaction that is valid on one but not the other chain. So if that happens, there is going to be a split. So the goal here is, if there is a split, to make sure that it is temporary, that one chain will ultimately win by things like either hash power or economic power. If that doesn't happen, if there is actually some kind of permanent split, it would create really a big sort of economic network effect problem in Bitcoin Cash where a lot of projects like mine, yours.org and Money Button, pretty much have to pick one, and we can't support both simultaneously. So it would break the community apart if that happened. So I hope there's no split. There is no guarantee to be a split.
What's the chance, do you think? I mean, if you...
I don't know. It's really hard to assess. I would say that, what is the probability of a split? I would say a probability of a temporary split is quite high. So the question is more like, what's the probability of a permanent split? I'd probably give it something like 25%, and I'll tell you why. No one actually wants a split, and this is not anywhere near as dramatic as the situation in late 2017 with Bitcoin that ended with things like basically the launch of Bitcoin Cash and the sort of the cancellation of SegWit 2x. The disagreement is actually less strong, and because everyone wants to stay unified, almost everyone, not everyone, most people want to stay unified, I think that it'll probably resolve itself, and there are a bunch of different ways that could happen, either hash power, economic power, or maybe, unlikely, but maybe people will just come to an agreement about what to do. So I think that most likely we won't see one, but actually there is a sizable probability. So it's 25% is up there, but it is still less likely than not seeing a split.
Yeah, it's still a hypothetical question, but what will be like the effect on the market, actually, market price, or
If there's a split?
or the hard fork itself? I mean,
Well, I think we've already seen a lot of it, although we haven't seen it all. So what's happening right now is, Bitcoin Cash, sort of relative to Bitcoin, has declined sort of its ratio quite a lot. I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head. I think we've seen a bit of that priced in, but there are other explanations for why Bitcoin, relatively speaking, has done better than Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash recently, which are things like just the fact that the cryptocurrency world regards Bitcoin as being this sort of relatively stable cryptocurrency. So you see whenever there's a bear market, you see this money sort of go into Bitcoin as a relatively safe cryptocurrency compared to many of the other ones.
institutions are starting with Bitcoin futures as well. I mean,
Yes, there's certainly interest there. So the economic impact would be basically, I don't think most people understand what's going on. So I think we've only seen it partially priced in right now. If people understand the seriousness of this, before the fork, we could see a greater decline in the price of Bitcoin Cash. But I could also see during and after the hard fork all sorts of things happening. Basically, if the situation resolves itself, I believe Bitcoin Cash will be stronger than it was before if there's no split, because we're going to learn something very important about how Bitcoin Cash is governed, and this is actually a reason to be optimistic. So long as there's no split, we actually understand how to govern Bitcoin Cash better, which means we're actually improving. We're actually going to have a stronger community, stronger blockchain, stronger businesses, and so on after the fork. But obviously, if there is a split, I think it's going to be bad. I don't think that the chains are going to be worth more separately than they are together. I think it'll be worse. I think that the value together would actually be lower than a unified Bitcoin Cash in the event of a split.
all right. Thank you very much, Ryan, for your insights. I always end with the question: what are your favorite altcoins, actually, besides Bitcoin Cash?
Sure. My favorite altcoin. So I'm very much focused on Bitcoin Cash, so I'm significantly less interested in any of the other cryptocurrencies. With that being said, I like Ethereum for a lot of reasons. Ethereum is trying to solve a real problem. It's a different problem than what Bitcoin Cash is trying to solve. And it's not a scam. There are an awful lot of cryptocurrencies out there that simply are not what they claim to be. Ethereum is a world computer. Whether that's a good idea or not is a different question, but it's a perfectly valid project. It's interesting. It's got competent people working on it. They've got hard problems that they're trying to solve, but they are actually trying to solve them. So
Can they scale?
I don't think they can scale. I don't think they're ever going to solve that one. I think that Ethereum is fundamentally unscalable because they have, basically you have to validate transactions in serial, and really fundamentally the only way to change that is to re-architect Bitcoin to be more, to re-architect Ethereum to be more like Bitcoin, which just isn't going to happen. We're better off with Bitcoin. If we need to do it that way, we've already got it, which is Bitcoin. Although when I say it that way, not to piss off the audience, but I'm talking about Bitcoin Cash, not Bitcoin Core. So anyway, to summarize, yeah, I like Ethereum. Most of the other ones are bad, so I'm not interested in almost any of the other cryptocurrencies.
Okay, perhaps you have an example of a coin that appears to be a scam
Yes. Yes.
like top 25
Yes.
coin.
EOS. EOS is a scam. EOS is Dan Larimer's third scam. It is not what it claims to be. It's not secure. It's not decentralized. This is just a pump and dump scam.
Can you, yeah, have arguments for that? Or
Sure. I mean, basically, I don't believe the technology works. There's nothing about it that makes any sense at all. The whole thing is just broken. So, the idea of having like a human language contract at the bottom, this is nothing. I mean, what you're doing is you're just having some kind of contract with other people. The software has nothing to do with it. It's just yet another exploration of basically how can we create a novel concept that we can get people to buy our token on the basis of this concept rather than on an actual product or actual working technology. So
proof of delegates, they say. I mean,
they
have
say a lot of things. I mean, they say a
governance
lot of
problems.
things. I do not believe they've actually solved any of the problems they say they've solved. I think they are just saying a lot of stuff.
They have a problem with their the voting delegates.
Yes. Yes, they've got weird issues with that stuff.
Okay, thanks for your time, Ryan, and all the best with your project.
Great, thank you.
So, if people are interested, they can go to a website.
Yes, please visit moneybutton.com.
Thanks. There